Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I would like to wrap up the Google Analytics events feature, and I'll start with explaining how can we debug sending analytics events from our local and production application and browser using Google Analytics Debugger plugin. After that, I'd like to show a little diagram that I've put together to go through the events that I ended up with and why specifically these events. Also, afterwards, we'll go through the code changes together, and I'll explain which events are fired from where exactly. And getting a bit ahead of myself, had to introduce a little queuing mechanism because of a race condition, so that was interesting. And finally, we'll have a little product demo where we'll see how events are flowing from the production application in case user gave their consent. Let's begin. So just to show you guys how Google Analytics can be debugged and what tools can you use to see locally what events are fired by your application. So as you can see, I have Google Analytics Debugger plugin turned on. It's available for both Firefox and Chrome. I'm currently on Firefox. And as you can see, there's a bunch of Google defined commands fired, right? So this is not really interesting for us, but if we press create new video button, then we can see that this is the event defined inside of our application. It's called create video CTA clicked, and it has location landing and signed in true. These are the properties that we attach to this event. A couple of things to mention about the events that I initially planned to implement versus the events that I ended up implementing. So first thing is that if we need to attach a property or a value to each event, let's say information about user being signed in or signed out, we don't have to do this manually for just each and every event that we fire. We can do this via the G tag Google Analytics object, and it is going to be propagated for all of the events that we fire downstream. Another thing to mention is that it's not necessary to cover all of the UI events that user can perform. Let's say button clicks or page visits. First thing is that page visits are already covered by Google Analytics by default, and pressing buttons, firing events on pressing buttons does not add a lot of value. Instead, we should cover the main milestones uh, along the user path. Let's say file selected or upload started, and we should attach some meaningful values to these events, like size of the video or time at which processing has started and time at which processing has finished, so that we can extract sensible information out of this. Let's say how long did video take to process, or what is the average or median size of a file, that sort of stuff. First, let's look at the helper functions that we added. First one would be is GA ready, where we check if Google Analytics has been loaded correctly. We use window.gtag object as a proxy. If it's defined, then we're ready to go. Next off, track event. That's pretty simple. We pass an event name, and then we pass parameters, and then we attach it to the gtag object. And finally, set user property. In case we need a global property that can be propagated within the session with all of the events, we use this method. And again, check if Google Analytics is ready beforehand, and then attach the property to the gtag object. Not a lot of changes on the homepage. First change would be to observe the change of authenticated state for the user and set it to properties so we can propagate this value with all of the events. And later on, we introduce a track event for button click And you can see the location is landing. That's how we distinguish between the same event key on different pages. On the upload page, there's a total of 4 events, everything around file being uploaded and processed. You can see that the first event is signalizing that file was selected, right? We have file extension and file size and duration. Next off, we want to signalize when the upload has started. And again, we pass all of the features of the file extension, language, preset, not only file, but also the language and the voice preset. And then we want to know if file upload was successful, right? So we insert one more event for when the file is processing. And in case any of the previous operations have failed, we have a upload failed event, right, with error code and error message. On the resulting page, we want to track if the video processing has completed successfully. That would be the first event. And the second event would be if the processing has failed. And we attach job ID and error message to these events. And we have a couple events for when the download button is clicked on the resulting page, if the user wants to download the video, and create another video clicked if user wants to continue creating voiceovers. So now we have to commit and push all of the changes and wait until GitLab pipeline deploys everything to production. There's one last batch of changes that I would like to discuss before we move onwards. I had to introduce these after debugging production application, and I saw that some of the events and properties that we set in the beginning of the loading of the application might get lost sometimes. I figure out after some debugging that this happens if Claro library loads after the Google Analytics loads. So Google Analytics is not getting initialized, but we still try to fire some events. And there is a race condition because of that. So how I plan to solve this? First is before firing any events, we should check if Google Analytics is ready, it has been initialized, and Claro consent or user consent is given and it's accessible via the Claro library. So you can see it over here, should send now. So if Google Analytics is ready and consent is given, we can fire events immediately. Otherwise, we will enqueue the events. So we have lists, right, for pending events and for pending properties. And we would enqueue events and properties into those lists. And then start polling for Google Analytics readiness state. In the meantime, all of the events are being enqueued, and we poll for readiness. And once we get the Google Analytics consent changed true, we flush queue, and we send all of the events in a batch. Okay, so let's have a little demo right now. I have a fresh tab opened. I don't have any cookies set, and I'm signed out. So now when I refresh, I expect to see Claro consent dialog first. It's here. And when I give my consent, I expect to see Google events start flowing. Okay, and I can see that first off, we should be logged out, like signed in flag should be, or property should be set as false, and it is. Okay, now let's try to sign in. Perfect, perfect. Now let's try to insert a video, and we can see that there's an event for file selected, and there's meta information for the file as well. Cool, cool, cool. And now we create the video. And finally, we can see video processing completed event over here. That's the expected behavior. Yeah, and also one thing I would like to verify is that if we don't give our consent for Google Analytics, if we decline this dialog, then no events should be flowing. Let's check this. Yep, I can see the console is clear. That's how I want it. And now just to double check that events are reaching our dashboard, here is the real-time overview tab opened for our application, and I can see that all of the events that we defined, like processing started and file selected and upload started, are here in the dashboard in the real-time overview. That's good. I think that's all I had for today, guys. In the next episode, we'll be setting up Google Ads dashboard and connect our conversion events with the Google Ads system, and probably start our first Google Ads campaign to bring in customers. With that said, thanks for your attention. I hope you guys are having a great day, and see you in the next one. Peace.